I'm a truck driver. My name is Jack Reynolds. For years, I've navigated the highways and byways of America, delivering goods from coast to coast. The road is my home, the hum of the engine my lullaby. But there's one stretch of highway that I dread. Iowa 80. It's known among truckers as the world's largest truck stop, but for me, it's the place where the haunting began. It started one cold, misty night in October. I was hauling a load of electronics to Denver, making my way through Iowa. The sky was overcast, the moon a mere sliver hidden behind thick clouds. The highway was deserted, a black ribbon stretching into the unknown. The only sound was the steady drone of my engine and the occasional whistling wind. I was halfway to my destination when I saw her, a figure standing by the side of the road, her form barely visible through the mist. She was wearing a white dress, tattered and stained, her long hair hanging in dark, wet strands. I slowed down, my heart pounding in my chest. As I got closer, I could see her face, pale with hollow, dark eyes that seemed to bore into my soul. I pulled over, rolling down the window. "Hey, miss, you need a ride?" I called out. She didn't answer. She just stood there staring at me. An uneasy feeling settled in my gut. Something wasn't right. I was about to drive away when she suddenly appeared at my window, her face inches from mine. I jumped, my heart leaping into my throat. "Help me," she whispered, her voice a ghostly echo. "Please, help me." I swallowed hard, trying to keep my composure. "What happened? Are you hurt?" "They killed me," she said, her voice trembling. "They left me here." I felt a chill run down my spine. "Who killed you?" But she didn't answer. Instead, she disappeared. One moment she was there, the next she was gone, leaving behind a lingering coldness. I sat there stunned, trying to process what had just happened. I shook my head, telling myself it was just my imagination, a trick of the light and shadows. I put the truck in gear and drove off, my mind racing. But as I drove, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see her face staring back at me. But there was nothing, just the empty road stretching out behind me. I arrived at my destination without further incident, but the encounter haunted me. I couldn't stop thinking about the woman, her plea for help, her haunted eyes. I asked around, talking to other truckers, but no one had heard of any recent accidents or murders on that stretch of highway. A few weeks later, I found myself back on Iowa 80, this time with a passenger. My buddy Mike had joined me for the ride, helping me with a particularly large haul. I hadn't told him about the woman. I didn't want to sound crazy. We were driving through the same stretch of highway when I saw her again. She was standing in the same spot wearing the same tattered dress. I slammed on the brakes, my heart pounding. "What the hell, Jack?" Mike shouted, grabbing onto the dashboard. "It's her," I whispered, my voice shaking. "The woman I told you about." Mike looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "What woman?" I pointed to the side of the road, but she was gone. Mike shook his head, muttering something about me needing sleep. I tried to laugh it off, but the fear gnawed at me. I knew what I had seen. We continued our journey, the atmosphere in the truck tense. Mike kept glancing at me, worried. I kept my eyes on the road, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. As we neared the truck stop, I saw her again. This time she was standing in the middle of the road. "Jesus Christ," Mike shouted as I swerved to avoid hitting her. We came to a screeching halt, the truck shuddering. I looked at Mike, his face pale. He had seen her too. We got out of the truck, our breaths fogging in the cold night air. The road was empty. There was no sign of the woman. But the coldness was back, wrapping around us like a shroud. "I told you," I said, my voice shaking. "I told you I saw her." Mike nodded, his eyes wide. "What the hell is she?" We got back in the truck, our nerves frayed. We didn't speak the rest of the way, the fear hanging between us like a dark cloud. We reached the truck stop, parking among the sea of other rigs. The bright lights and noise were a welcome relief from the eerie silence of the highway. But the woman wasn't done with us. That night, as we settled into our bunks, we heard a tapping on the windows. We sat up, our hearts pounding. The tapping grew louder, more insistent. I peered out the window and saw her face, pale and ghostly, staring at me. "Help me," she whispered, her voice echoing through the cab. "Please, help me." "No." Mike and I scrambled out of the truck, our breaths coming in short gasps. She was standing there, her eyes pleading. "They killed me," she said, her voice breaking. "They left me here." "Who killed you?" I asked, my voice trembling. She didn't answer. Instead, she pointed down the highway. "Find them," she said. "Make them pay." And then she was gone. Mike and I stood there, shaken, trying to make sense of what had just happened. We decided to investigate, to find out who she was and what had happened to her. We asked around the truck stop, talking to the old-timers who had been driving the highways for years. One of them, a grizzled old man named Hank, knew the story. He told us about a woman named Sarah who had been murdered on Iowa 80 back in 1968. She had been hitchhiking, trying to get to her family in Denver, but she never made it. She was found dead, her body dumped by the side of the road. Hank told us that her killers were never caught. They had gotten away with it, leaving her spirit to wander the highway, seeking justice. Mike and I were determined to help her. We went to the local library, digging through old newspapers and police reports. We found out that 2 men had been seen with Sarah the night she disappeared. They were known drifters moving from town to town, preying on hitchhikers. We took the information to the police, but they were skeptical. Cold cases weren't their priority, and they didn't believe in ghosts. But Mike and I knew what we had seen. We decided to take matters into our own hands. We tracked down the men, finding them in a rundown trailer park outside of Des Moines. They were old and frail, but the evil in their eyes was unmistakable. We confronted them, telling them we knew what they had done. They denied it, of course, but the fear in their eyes told us the truth. We left them there, knowing that justice had finally been served. We returned to the truck stop, hoping that Sarah's spirit could now find peace. That night, as we settled into our bunks, we heard the tapping on the windows again. But this time it was different. There was no fear, no urgency, just a soft, gentle tapping. We peered out the windows and saw her, Sarah standing there, her face calm and peaceful. She smiled at us, a look of gratitude in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for helping me." And then she was gone, fading into the night. The coldness lifted, replaced by a warmth that wrapped around us like a comforting embrace. Mike and I continued our journeys, but we never forgot Sarah. We told her story to other truckers, passing it down through the years. Some believed us, some didn't, but we knew the truth. We had helped a restless spirit find peace, and in doing so, we had found a sense of purpose. The haunting of Iowa 80 was over, but the memory of Sarah lingered. Every time I drive that stretch of highway, I think of her. I see her face, her eyes pleading for justice, and I know that we did the right thing. The road is a lonely place, but sometimes it's also a place of redemption, a place where the past can be laid to rest and the future can be filled with hope.